people will start to come in. As I will keep on waffling on. Hello, Simon. Hello, Elena. Hello, Luca. Great to see you all. I'll say what I always say when we start one of these briefings, which is I would far rather we were all in a conference room in a lovely hotel, and after the session we'd all be going to lunch together, which would just be so great, and it's what we're all missing, I think, more than anything at the moment. But let's hope we will all be able to be together in real life at some point soon. But in the meantime, while we are not, we will continue with these series of EuRA briefings. They're always great to do. It's we had a lot of people sign up for this. We've got 90 people signed up, which is great. Obviously, we'll probably only have half of that come in. So thank you to everybody who signed up. Just to let you know, this will be recorded. I will get the edit out to everybody who signed up, hopefully tomorrow. So if you do have to back off, or you've got to make a call, or something else takes your attention, don't worry, you will be able to access the recording, as I'm sure you will know. So this briefing is based on communication. We have two terrific speakers here today, Rhea and Narula from Formula Group India, and Dr. Carmelina Lawton Smith, who, if you don't know, is EuRA's strategic consultant for education. We are very fortunate that over the past year, we were able to allow access to the training academy for free, which was great. And those incredibly dedicated people who decided to take their training to its highest level, like Rhea, decided to go forward and do their fellowship. And out of those fellowship case studies came some absolutely fantastic bits of research and information. So today we're going to go through a new approach to the training of communication skills for relocation professionals and consultants, which is Rhea's speciality. But first of all, I just want to quickly ask Carmelina, we put together this fellowship case study idea quite a few years ago. Can you just briefly outline for anybody who doesn't know how that process works, what it is?
Okay, so hi, welcome everyone. Nice to see everyone still with us despite the challenges. Absolutely. So a lot of you will know that we've put a lot of effort into trying to allow people in the industry to get professionalized in terms of holding our position, I suppose, in terms of, yeah, we are a profession. We do something more than, move stuff around and project manage things. And in order to support that, we've invested quite a lot in terms of the training offer. And we've done that at the basic level for the core program that Dominic and co have put in place, which is the MIM program. And then obviously people who are more specialist and want to develop further, looking at the MIM Plus modules, which are really helpful in terms of broadening the scope of what people can do when they've been in the industry a little while. But it became clear that really, above that, we have an industry which is still evolving, it's growing, and there's very little specific dedicated research that brings a lot of the management ideas and principles into the relocation context. And we have such a lot of expertise among our membership that we really thought it would be nice to harvest that and bring it together. So the idea that was originally put out in terms of the fellowship was that people could take a topic of interest to their own particular industry in terms of where they're angled, so whether they're in legal or relocation specifically, or moving, or whatever it is, in the context where they are, and they could work on something that would be useful to the business, but also then has a benefit more broadly to perhaps other people in the industry. So there are lots of ideas from leadership, from management, from cross-cultural studies that are kind of useful, but people don't put them in that relocation context. And so we were trying to give people the opportunity to take their learning further in a way that was very customized, very practical, and very useful to themselves. So they're not just doing an essay like at university and having it marked like compare and contrast. It's basically saying, okay, what have you read that's been useful, that's been interesting? How do we put that in relocation? And the format for that was effectively to write a case study. And we make it a case study of somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 words. We've had to increase that because we're getting such good quality stuff that we don't really want to cut them down. And it allows people to spend a bit of time actually thinking about how that applies in relocation. They put that essay, if you like, in for marking, and then we mark it against a scheme of work. So that scheme of what we're marking to is available. Generally, it's about picking up something that is of interest, like a book or a theory or an idea, then telling us a bit about that, telling us how you've adapted and applied it into the context that you're in, and therefore what the benefits have been to you and your business. So very practical, but hopefully using some stuff that's not just come out of your head, but out of your head in association with other researched material, maybe say a book, maybe an article, maybe a conference paper, something that you've read somewhere that you thought that's useful. And the idea is really to increase the research platform that we as an industry have accessible and useful to members. So Dominic, is that enough? Or do you
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much. And there's masses of information about that on the website under the Education tab. Just go to where it says MIM plus Fellow. And you'll also find other people's fellowship case studies there as well. And what we try and do is when a case study has been delivered, like Rhea's today, we bring it out in this kind of format so that people can learn. Rhea, what made you decide to do it?
I feel like Carmelina answered why I decided to do it. So I have a background in psychology, and in my role at Formula, I'm always thinking about how I can apply my skills and learnings from psychology and NLP to global mobility, to improve their service delivery, to make moving across places smooth, anxiety-free, and I'm always thinking about that. And like Carmelina said, also on your fellowship page, it says that the fellowship is about applying your learnings from a model or theory into your professional role. So number one, that connected with me immediately because that's what I'm doing all the time. And I felt like the process of doing that, of documenting how I may be going, what I'm already probably doing, will really just make my learning conscious. I can't explain it. I become aware of what I already know, the connections I'm already making, and then maybe the gaps in that connection, what I can take forward. So it's that whole, it makes it also conscious. So that was number one, why I decided to go for it. And number two, because being a young mobility professional, the opportunity to do this with a mentor who guides me through the process, whose brain I can pick, this being, in this case, it was Carmelina. What a great opportunity to grow. So, which is why I went for it.
It is really interesting, isn't it? Because like I said, like Carmelina said, what we wanted to get from this was something that would actually be useful to you. And I think when you start that research, you suddenly realize, you can't know what you don't know. And when I did mine, I was doing the impact of cultural theory on working with an intercultural board, the board of EuRA from many, many different countries, and what that means. So everything feeding back into communication, which I think was fascinating from your perspective. So going further, you decided to look specifically at the precision model to enhance communication training. Briefly, because obviously your case study is online for everybody to look at, and I'll put it in the YouTube link as well. What is the precision model?
So, oh my God, that is so difficult to explain briefly. I wish I could. So I'll give it a shot. So the precision model basically consists of a set of tools that help you elicit information with greater specificity. That's what it sort of says. And it takes from NLP and the meta model of NLP, which are a set of questions that again help you communicate with greater specificity and help you elicit information that make you understand the other individual's perspective better, right? The precision model was actually made for an organization, right? For an organizational context. So for managers in an organization to communicate with their teams. I sort of adapted questions from the precision model to be used by relocation consultants when they're interacting with assignees. So, I hope that covers what it is.
We lost you a bit there, but sorry, that's one of the things that we have to deal with Zoom. No, it's fine. It made perfect sense. So what I was thinking was, when you were approaching that, your intended outcome was for consultants to be able to get more accurate responses from assignees?
No. So I'll tell you, when I decided to do that, my goal was to enhance formulas needs assessment process and help assignees help consultants better understand the incoming family's needs with greater clarity, better understanding during pre-arrival services. Because of course, with the influx of digital communication taking place, a lot of communication is happening before the assignee arrives, before decisions are made about housing, about school search. So I wanted to give consultants at Formula a structure for their interaction with the assignees so that they can give assignees an opportunity to expand on requirements. Open a dialogue where assignees can share their specific needs, their specific concerns, and therefore then meet them better, match expectations, set accurate expectations, highlight information about the location that might help these assignees transition better into wherever they're going.
And I mean, I'm going to come on to Carmelina in a second about that, because we've got more information about that kind of approach. But what was the response from your consultants? How did they take to it?
Oh, so we did this through a very long training program, which had like 2 phases. The first phase was about giving consultants the skills, talking about questions in general, how to use questions, what are the tools, how do they use them. And then the second phase was to allow them to apply that in their service delivery, match it to their individual styles of communication, to their existing wisdom, to their existing experience. So because we did it in this way, I think they were very, very open to learning about it, because it wasn't really like, do this and you should question like this. It's more about, this is an interesting way to look at questioning, and then they would like apply that to what they already do. So it's sort of like, so I think they were really open to it. I'm really thankful to them, but they were very open to it.
And that's what I loved when I was reading your case study. I just felt that the way that you approached this was so person-centered. It was all about the individual. It wasn't trying to like lay a top down, this is what you must do. It was use your strengths, use your skills, and then adapt them to, to how it works. So it was really, really impressive. Carmelina, when we were looking at the other parts of the MIM Plus program and the MIM program and the coaching approaches in mobility program, quite a lot of what Rhea is saying comes back to things like, for example, the GROW model. Do you want to just point out again, if people want to take this idea of communications and questioning in particular, where would they find more data?
Yes. Because obviously a lot of the things that we've worked out, that while the global cross-cultural stuff is really useful and interesting, with sort of this global mobility world with the global nomad, we're finding that we actually need to think a lot more about the individual, not just they're a nationality, but they're actually an individual underneath that. And that's what a lot of Rhea's work identifies, that we're trying to get inside this person's head in terms of how they're making meaning of things. And that's very much how we approach the coaching approaches to mobility program, which is in the MIM Plus program. And as you said, Dom, that starts with the GROW model, which is very much about identifying the goal of what people think success looks like. And one of the ideas, which was in Rhea's case study, is what she calls an evidence procedure, which is a very fancy name for saying, what does good look like? Where do you want to get to? And actually framing that, rather than working with someone to say, okay, give me your tick list of things. It's getting into their head as to what that means. Because if you say, do you want a garden, yes or no, you have no idea what their view as garden is. Do they come from New York or do they come from Texas? It's a very different idea of what's a garden. And so that leads into module 2 on the coaching approaches to mobility, which is very much about questioning and listening. Rhea was saying about the structure of questions is incredibly important. We often underestimate how much the way we frame questions affects the way people think. My bugbear is, we have meetings with clients and we have an agenda item that says service issues. Well, once you put that, what issues have you found? That's what they're going to think about. We never say, oh, what are the main benefits of our service? And we frame the question in terms of what we want them to look at. So there are examples from that that kind of link into that. And then there's another thing which Rhea talked about, which is what we call pointers, which is understanding those keywords in that cross-cultural context. Because sometimes, okay, when I said, you know, garden very flippantly, we know that that is different. But language brings with it a whole load of potentials for miscommunication and misunderstanding that we don't even notice. I was reading a book, and obviously a lot of people know my background is Italian, and it was a book about how different cultures and languages will use words that have no meaning in other languages. They just don't exist in that form. And it was there were things about, you know, why Eskimos have 45 words for snow and that kind of thing. Yeah. But the one that resonated for me is passeggiata. And I don't know if we've got Spaniards or Latin speakers among us, but for those of us in Italy, you know, if you translate that into English, it's a walk, but it's not a walk, because in the Italian culture, a passeggiata is defined as to see and be seen. Right. You are going out in order to look at the world and to be seen in the world. So families will go out on a Saturday night, they'll put their best clobber on, and they will just walk around the streets to be seen. Mm-hmm. And we have no cultural equivalent. So Rhea's work on making those implicit assumptions very explicit is really what she's focusing on. So it is incredibly valuable to try and make sure we meet our customer needs, which is where we get to when we did the Excellence in Service Delivery program on the Core MIM program, because obviously we knew that is an extra piece, isn't it, that is not covered in the GMS. And it very much focuses on this idea of, you know, good service is relative. It's relative to what's in their head, their expectations. And a lot of the questions that she's talking about is to frame those expectations. We all know that expectations are not a finish line that is absolute for everyone. Some people have ridiculously high expectations, or expectations that are frankly totally unreasonable. Mm-hmm. And this allows us to frame those expectations very early on. So that kind of how it integrates with the program. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that Rhea said I thought were really interesting. She talked about raising awareness with the consultants. And I will always say to people, you know, you can't change something you're not aware of. That raising of awareness, once you know, oh, that's interesting, questioning structures affect the sort of answer I get, then you can do some work with it. And that's what Rhea's managed to do with the consultants. It's not saying, you know, here's a prescriptive, you know, set of sequence call log that you have to follow. It's not a script, but it's oh, okay, I can see this, and how do I need to therefore adapt something that sounds right for me? And the second thing I'd say is that people know a lot of stuff, but it's when they have to explain it to someone else, you suddenly really understand it. And I suspect Rhea will have found this, that when you suddenly realize that you have to train someone else or write it into an assignment or something, you suddenly think, oh, okay, do I really know what I'm saying here? And it therefore helps your own knowledge and understanding, because you're having to write it down. So the case study is an output of your learning. It's just a kind of a byproduct. It isn't, you're not doing it for the case study, you're doing it because you'll understand better. And as a result, we happen to get a case study out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely the point. Yeah, Rhea.
Oh, no, I'd add to what Carmelina said, which is also something that I experienced when I was doing the training, and you know, in response to your question earlier as well, Dom, you know, there are moments in the training where people might, oh, I do ask this question already, you know, or oh yeah, I always ask this. So I mean, I think the best sort of trainings are also trainings where you feel like it naturally fits into your existing wisdom and just sort of like, you know, raises awareness. And that is something that a lot of the consultants responded with when we did the training. They were like, oh, yes, I asked this question. But many times it's about, when do you ask that question? At what moment? And so that was something that is very important, and something that this training also made me realize is that in future, when I do trainings, I want to to be something so simple. And I think, Carmelina, we said this once in one of our mentoring sessions, something so simple that you can explain it to a 9-year-old. You know what I'm saying? That's when you know, you know. So.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? And I think that's something that I've heard like across the EuRA membership when, you know, when organizations are approaching training in our space, in our mobility sphere, what comes out of it is how collaborative that is. So like with your team, Rhea, you're saying, you know, they're already saying, oh, yes, I do that. And people share their best practices and they're genuinely keen to do that so that the assignee outcome just is better. I mean, it's just a mark of our industry. One thing that fascinated me when I was reading your case study, well, actually, when we did the learning and development session, you said the word neuroplasticity, I remember, yeah. And that one's on the YouTube channel, and watch it, it's really good. You talk about neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, in your case study. Can you briefly outline, I mean, I know it's a huge thing, but basically, what is it?
So neuro-linguistic programming is a study of how our neurological systems, so our nervous system, and our language system influence each other, interact with each other, and program our behavior. So when we experience the world around us, how these internal systems form our reality of the world, so to say, and influence and guide our actions, our behaviors, decisions, etc. That's what NLP is in the broadest, most, I guess, easy way that I can say it in. And yeah, that's what it is.
It's so interesting because it's, I mean, I remember years back, the book by George Orwell, 1984, a big part of it is the Newspeak Dictionary. And one of the kind of cores of that was, say, for example, there is no word for love. Does love then exist?
Exactly.
Right. And that's kind of where NLP is based, isn't it? Carmelina, you've got some quite strong views on NLP.
Well, in terms of NLP, has been, a lot of people will have heard of NLP, and it became very, very fashionable back in sort of 80s, 90s. It got very packaged, it got very commercialized as a way of manipulating people. And therefore it acquired a lot of bad publicity. I'm fairly indifferent. I'm kind of on the fence. I think there are lots of things in NLP that have an interesting value that we can build on. The whole packaging, becoming an NLP master practitioner and kind of, you know, going to a huge hall with 500 people it gets a bit evangelical for some in its approach. But a lot of the ideas that NLP has managed to very effectively market have actually come from valid psychological disciplines where they have been drawn from and put together by a very savvy marketeer, is what I will say.
Right.
But that doesn't undermine the value of some of the ideas, because Rhea will know that a lot of it comes from psychological, perfectly valid, you know, psychological research. The main issue many people have with it is that the package of NLP has not really been subject to rigorous research.
Right.
Having said that, a lot of the independent elements have come from strong theoretical grounding. So I think we have to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but at the same time, it's you know, you treat it with caution. And as we've said, the whole point is we have expert, knowledgeable practitioners in this industry, like Rhea, who can take these ideas and go, okay, let's be selective, which are valuable, which will help us, and which can we make some use of and help evolve to be useful.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you, Carmelina. The way NLP is packaged scares me sometimes. And it is really not, I mean, that was one of the reasons I was very hesitant to even do NLP or, you know, practice NLP, because the way they market it is very manipulative. Interestingly, the way I learned NLP was very different. So I met this man called Dr. Somesh Chadha, who is NLP like coach, practitioner, trainer. And I did a 1-year mentorship under him. And I learned with him over a year instead of the whole, you know, you're sitting in a room with 300 people over 3 days. And then after 3 days, I'm like, how much do you really know after 3 days? Not enough. So I think that's why I have a very different view of NLP, because of the way I learned it. It was very different.
That is very interesting, because again, I mean, that brings me actually to my next sort of point, which is learning styles and how people do learn. And you said, you know, there you were working with somebody one-to-one, and you chose to do your case study using the mentoring program. How was that? How was it helpful to you?
The mentoring program?
Yeah.
So Carmelina's on call. I'm just joking. It was absolutely amazing. I think Carmelina knows that, and I've shared that with her. It was, I think, the best decision I took was to do it under the mentoring. I feel like what the mentoring program does is it breaks down the process for you. So when you think about the case study, you're like, okay, I have to write a case study of like 3,000, 1,500, 2,500 words. Where do I begin? Like, how do I start? And what I would have done otherwise is start writing the draft for the case study on day one. Be like, okay, let me think about it. What Carmelina did is she broke it down into parts. So she gave me a series of questions that I had to answer, and then another series of questions in our next meeting that I had to expand on. And by the third meeting, I already had my draft, and I didn't even know it. So it was an absolutely amazing experience, I would say.
I think it's very hard to self-start. I mean, we're all busy anyway. You know, we're all doing our day-to-day jobs, and then you think to yourself, gosh, I've got to go and do this as well. Where do I begin?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. By the way, if anybody's got any questions, either put them in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we'll come to those at the end. So, and Carmelina, when we drew up that mentorship program, what was its real what was the rationale behind it? Pretty well.
Yeah, I think Rhea's explained it very well in terms of, you know, for a lot of us, it's an awful long time since we had to write anything of that length in that much detail, and you guys don't really get that headspace of time, and it's a very reactive industry where stuff is coming in all the time. So from my view, I think it was very much, how do we give people some support and some deadlines and a structure, because otherwise it is always going to go to the bottom of the pile. And I will just sort of build on what Rhea said. You know, there was a point where I wrote to her and I said, we've got a meeting tomorrow and I don't seem to have a draft. And within a couple of hours, I had a draft. And that's almost because, oh my goodness, it popped up in her inbox and it was exceptionally good. And I think because, you know, she'd done the sort of the groundwork of just planning out. And then now it was just like, oh, I just need to get this done because I've got a meeting tomorrow and she's hassling me. So I become a kind of a bit of a thorn in some ways. But what it does is it kind of gives you that push, because otherwise it's always at the bottom of the inbox. So if it's something you want to do, because, you know, it does give people a profile. You know, we've managed to get some publicity for the formula group for Rhea. So, you know, if things are picked up, they can be very good for the organization that is supporting it. Obviously, there's the personal satisfaction of knowing that you do actually know quite a lot of stuff. Rhea talked about her people going, oh yeah, well, I do that already. Sometimes people undervalue how much knowledge and expertise they have, and we don't often get the chance to get that recognition because we're so busy with the day job. And it's really nice to kind of go, oh wow, people think this is good, and yes, I do that already, and maybe I have got some expertise. So that personal satisfaction, and, you know, apart from the lapel badge, which is obviously the most coveted prize in the EuRA world, but just to demonstrate that, you know, you're still interested in moving forward, in developing and being challenged, that kind of stuff. So I think for me that the mentoring is really just a bit of support that is there, rather than us saying, go do this, and casting people adrift and they have no idea where to start, because it just, as Rhea said, it works on a very simple structure. Let's start talking about suitable topics. Let's put down what the key things are you think you want to cover. You document that. Then we get to okay, here's a structure, put them into that, see what that looks like. And then, as Rhea said, hopefully out of it falls something that's very nearly there. And then because you've got the mentoring, you've got someone else to kind of read it and make final edits, get it to word count, whatever it is. You don't feel like you're completely alone in trying to battle uphill with this thing, because it can seem like this big monster of a thing. And that's not the aim. The aim is to make it something that's really useful and makes the thinking time useful.
And relevance. It's all about relevance. And I mean, on that point, I really do urge you that the case study will be in the YouTube notes. It's on the website. It's really worth downloading. It is a blueprint for improving communications training within a relocation business. So, you know, again, from that point of view, what's great about the program is that people's skills then get shared out. And that's, you know, very much what we're all, you know, trying to be about in EuRA. And, you know, we get that opportunity when we're all together at a conference or at a meeting, but over a year like this, we haven't had that opportunity. So it's great that, Rhea, you put that together, because actually it is a practical document about how to look again at your communications training.
Can I just add, it's also very readable. If anybody thinks, oh, this is going to be full of, long words, and, it absolutely is very relevant and practical. And obviously we have now started to build up a bank of material. And the one that we had on fraud, the topics can be incredibly varied. We're talking about communication, that's my kind of bent, that's Rhea's interest, but the one that Gordon looked at on the fraud stuff, so if you are in a legal environment, an accounting environment, a visa environment, whatever that might be, any topic is up for grabs, and we will find a suitable person to support you through putting it together and getting it marked.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's brilliant. Well, just before we go, when you were saying about passeggiata, our word of the week this week, oh, it's gone. That's annoying. Was abbozzare, to meekly accept a far from satisfactory outcome in Italian. And I got that from this book called The Meaning of Tingo. Okay. Which is hilarious. Extraordinary words from around the world. It's a great little intercultural book. That I think it's still in print. I'm not sure. I got it on Amazon. Rhea, thanks so much for bringing this to us, and thank you for all your work. And Carmelina, again, as always, thank you. Nice little note from Thomas in the chat box says, look forward to a precision model for sales and customer relations as well, from Rhea. So there you go. That's fellow. You could be a double fellow.
I can. Oh,
that double fellow. We'll have to have a bespoke badge made for that. Thank you both so much. That was really enlightening. And if anybody has any questions, you know where we are. Carmelina's contact details are on the website under About Us, Meet with Strategic Consultants. You know where I am. You can always contact me. Rhea, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Carmelina, as always, a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for taking part and for joining us. And like I say, it will be on the YouTube channel, hopefully tomorrow, and I will all send you the link to the edit. In the meantime, stay well, stay safe, and we will be together again soon. And when we do get to do that, Rhea, let's put your case study into the conference program, maybe, hopefully, for Seville in April. Take care, everybody. Bye. Bye.